Welcome back to the Ride and Laugh podcast. If you love mountain biking, you are in the right place. Picture your last group ride. You're back at the parking lot. The stoke is high. Everyone's talking about the trails, the jumps, the drops, progression, tech, nutrition. That's what we talk about every week on the Ride and Laugh podcast. You love bikes. We love bikes. Let's drop in. Sage, how are you today?
Oh, Danny, I'm doing so good, man. I had a little bit of a letdown this week, but I'm feeling much better. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Life presents us with challenges all the time. We go up and down our vibrational spiral. And when we hold those thoughts in our mind, when we realize that we don't have the thoughts that we like, and we put thoughts in that we do like, life gets better, riding gets better, we learn more, we ride better, and life just flows. As we say, flow on the bike, flow in life.
It's hard to have a bad day on the bike, my friend, and it's hard to talk about bikes and not smile.
Totally true. I don't know about all the people listening, but hopefully when you turn this podcast on, you start to smile and you're just thinking about mountain biking, because mountain biking is such a passion. We love doing it so much. So, all right. Well, we will get into it because we are reviewing podcast number 38, Hello E-Bike, Goodbye Fitness. Are mountain bikers missing the joy of peak fitness?
Yeah.
And that was a really interesting episode, Sage, because the whole concept was we were going to get into that dog mentality of training and conquering tech climbs and conquering long climbs and all the work and effort that it takes. And we did talk about that, but we really kind of went into well, what about e-bikes and what about riders that start on e-bikes, and are people that have e-bikes moving away from their analog bikes, and is that joy of training and that joy of getting strong, is that missing now? And the feedback was really, really interesting.
Oh, yeah.
What was your impression of the feedback and of the podcast and where it ended up going?
You know, as usual, I'm always learning. And that's what I love about this podcast is you and I come in with our opinions, and then we get the feedback and it's like, oh, I didn't even think about it that way.
Totally.
But in regards to the actual podcast, I actually thought we did a pretty good job of illustrating how we approach riding, you know, and really how we started has molded us into the type of riders that we are today.
Yes.
And the thing that I realized is we don't have all the pieces, you know, so we are who we are right now because of, you know, where we came from. But our future probably includes e-bikes. And when that happens, I'm curious to see how we look at fitness at that point. And our listeners came through with some really good comments and feedback to kind of open us up to what that might look like.
100% agree. And I would just like to change probably own e-bikes to definitely own e-bikes.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I'm sold on it. And we're all about the progression and using it as a tool like that. But it is really interesting because we're coming from, like you said, we're coming from a very different place. So, well, let me get into some of the interesting comments and then we will comment on the comments.
Yeah.
So thank you, everybody. Ride and Laugh 1 at Gmail and on the YouTube for leaving comments. And we have just awesome feedback. And we had Rob,
yes,
who we rode with, and he is an e-bike only rider. And as we mentioned last week, he's been riding for 4 years and he started on an e-bike and he only rides e-bike. And Rob said, I'm in the best shape of my life and ride e-bike only. I feel that it helps me ride faster and take less breaks. I'm pretty limited on how long I can be out. E-bikes let me get the miles and get a great workout in a shorter amount of time. It also forced me to start lifting weights to help my bunny hops and loading it onto the bike rack with a smiley face because they are heavy. But I was wondering about that. Are e-bikers cross training?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't, when we demoed those bikes for the 3 days, and it was 3 days in a row, we went to Trexler on the first day and then we went to Mount Penn twice. And I remember being fatigued, but not in my legs. I remember my upper body just being so sore from trying to lift this 50-pound bike. And so I guess the fitness for me, and again, this is just for me on those just 3 days, that short time period that I got to ride, I wasn't fatigued in the legs, which was great because we did some big miles. We rode for a really long time, but the upper body definitely, I was like, oh, if I was going to do this, I definitely need to like get some weight training in just to get that part to work out. In terms of like the overall fitness of e-bikes, I think what we're finding out is, a lot of people are using it for zone 2 training. We didn't get to experiment with that because we didn't get to live with them for that long. I'm curious to see if that's true. If you're able to get more fit on an e-bike, that would be quite interesting. You know what though?
Yeah.
I would also like to see the reverse of that. Instead of us getting an e-bike, what if he got an analog bike and tell me what you think of that kind of a fitness. And then what do you think is harder? And what do you think? I don't know. I'd be really curious to see what the reverse of that would be.
Well, we have a comment that touches on that a little bit. And we also got a really awesome email from our buddy Jeff Jackson, great listener and commenter.
Yeah.
And Jeff loves e-bikes. And he said he rides his e-bike about half the time. And then he has 2 analog bikes that he rides the other half.
Oh.
But since he started e-biking, he feels like he's gotten in the best shape of his life because it's just allowed him to put in that much more pedal time. So, like maybe you're just getting out more because you have the e-bike and so you're riding more. And so, in Jeff's case, he lost a bunch of weight.
Dude.
So, to get to the trail when you're exhausted and you're taking your analog bike and you got to do a couple climbs and your legs are shot, there's overtraining, there's all sorts of things that can happen. And it's a lot of work. Most people aren't walking out their back door and just mountain biking.
Yeah.
So getting to the trailhead is usually it's a time commitment, and you're putting the rack onto the bike or into your pickup truck, and you're getting the bike ready. It's got to be, and then you're all your gear, but you get to the trailhead. It's not an instant thing like walking out your door and running or road cycling. It's work, and so if you're real tired and you have an e-bike, and you can do that and know that you can go get a good ride anyway. And a nice little workout on a day, maybe you wouldn't have done anything. I'm a little bit different because, as you know, I tend to do something every day. I just like movement. I've always been like that.
Yeah. Well, and you also have an indoor trainer. So it's like, it's pretty easy for you to just hop on that and just go. Like you don't even have to get dressed. I mean, you probably ride that thing naked. I have no idea. Do you ride that thing
naked? I'm
naked?
training for the naked bike ride in Philadelphia.
Oh, no.
They reached out to us after the last podcast and they said, you guys look like a couple of naked VIPs in our book. And so, I'll be doing all my training naked from here on out. And then Mark at POV Trails, he wrote, I'd also like to add another reason to get an e-bike. I have 3 young kids and want to go for a ride. If I don't have an e-bike, it means I only get 1 lap in my limited time. With an e-bike, an hour ride could easily mean more than 1 lap for me. And that makes a lot of sense. A young family, we're going to do a podcast on work-life balance at some point because that's something that we both have been through, struggled with, found some balance.
Yeah.
But, when Mark's talking about having 3 young kids and you want to get out and you want to have fun for an hour.
Yeah. No, I had the pleasure of running into Mark actually at Phoenixville Bike Park on Saturday. And, he's
awesome.
got 3 little ones. Yeah, it was so great. He's got 3 little ones. And I can't imagine how crazy that must be. They're all, within a year of each other. And just to be able to carve out some time, make the most efficient use out of that time makes a lot of sense. Those are things that, I forget about. My kids are all grown at this point. They're just about out of the house.
Yeah.
But I forgot what that was like, having little ones like that and watching Mark and his wife, wrestle the kids around and make sure that everyone got a turn. But, that's a crazy, hectic life. And so I can totally see how the e-bike makes sense. You want to maximize that fun time.
Here's what I was thinking of with the e-bike is when my kids were really young and I would go out for a spin and oftentimes something would happen. Like maybe I get a flat tire and then all of a sudden I'm like 10 minutes over, 15 minutes over, and I'm just like hustling to get back. Or maybe you stop and you talk to somebody or something, something happens. You have this really tight time constraint. You're on an e-bike. You just turn that sucker into turbo mode and know that you can get back to the car in like 7 or 8 minutes.
Oh yeah.
That's a huge benefit. So, you could put it in eco, you can get a nice workout, maybe even turn it off, which is something we'll get into with our next comment.
Yeah.
But I'm sure you can get a great workout in an hour and then you still have that juice if you need to, hightail it back to the car because our spouse, our loved one is making it so that we can get out. And they say, all right, you got an hour.
Yeah. Make the best of it. Yep.
And the last thing you want to do is abuse that and show up, 90 minutes later or, an hour 45 later. And yeah. And then you're just, you feel terrible, and you also might lose bike privileges. So.
The worst is when you have to call your spouse to come pick you up. So not only are you late, but you're like, honey, I'm hurt, or honey, I got a flat. Yeah. Now they got to, wrangle up all the kids and then come pick your, dumb rear end up. It's the worst.
I broke my hand on a mountain bike ride, and I got myself home, but we had our firstborn was like, several months old, and my wife and my hand needed surgery, and she's like, you better learn how to change diapers with one hand. Because you're like, this is not cool. And I did. That was the last thing I wanted was for my mountain bike hobby was already, and I don't even want to call it a hobby, it's a passion, but it's already something that she was making sacrifice for. And then I go and, have that accident. So, all right. So this one was really interesting. Thanks, Mark, for the comment. And really interesting stuff. And John Morris commented on the YouTube, I live in the UK and our bikes are limited in power and speed. The max speed is 15 miles per hour. Thank you for putting that in miles per hour, by the way, and not in kilometers, because I wasn't going to do the conversion.
Oh, good catch.
He likes to ride over 15. So the e-bike is a handicap with extra weight. And he says, I regularly turn the power off and run my bike as heavyweight regular bike. And it makes it feel like it gets him tired a lot faster, with the advantage of knowing that he can turn the power on and take a rest without having to stop. It's amazing how powerful eco feels after running with no power. I cycle regularly with a group that is mostly analog, so I run my analog with them. And because my regular bike is so light, it feels like I'm on my e-bike. I'm 62 years young, and I went through cancer treatment a few years ago. My e-bike has given me back 20 years and helped me recover the fitness that I lost. So a ton to unpack there, but awesome.
So much.
Thanks, John. That is,
Yeah. Why are we capping these things at 15 miles an hour? That was like the one thing that jumped into my, what's happening there? I don't understand.
I know. Are they capped here? Are they capped in the US at 20, right?
I think it's even higher than that. I think it might be like 25 or.
I thought we heard someone say that taking it to a bike park wasn't as much fun because it's capped at 25. I mean, at 20.
I think it's 25. And when we had the Levos, was this display screen set to miles per hour or kilometers? Because there's one point on that downhill run, and I am cooking this thing. We put it into like turbo just to see what it would be like. This thing was up over 40. I don't know if it was kilometer per hour or miles per hour, but I mean, I think these things are capped at like 25, not 20. We were really cooking it.
Yeah, I wonder when he says it's capped at 15, like, does that mean that it literally won't go over 15, or the motor won't go over 15? Like, could you pedal it?
Absolutely. Yes, yeah. You can go faster. So the motor just kicks off.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. But that seems really low.
It's kind of a bummer. Yeah, it's kind of a bummer. 15 is not all that fast, I don't think. Yeah.
Well,
yeah. So
you know what though, Danny? I mean, how fast do you need to go up a climb? Maybe 15 is just enough.
Well, that's true.
If you think about how fast 15 is, that's pretty fast. Like when we used to single speed, and that's a fast ride because we have to keep momentum. Your average speeds at the WIS would be like 9, 8.5, 9, maybe even like 10 miles per hour. So maybe 15 is enough. I don't know. It just sounds
15
slow.
Definitely would be enough going uphill. But if you want to I don't know. It does sound slow. Like if you're like flat or slightly downhill and you just want to add a little extra juice.
Yeah.
I don't know. Let us know. Rideandlaugh1 at Gmail and YouTube comments. What are the caps on these things? And if John and our other listeners in Europe or the UK, why 15? What's going on there, and how does that affect the ride? Does it make it less fun? That's very interesting. But what I thought was really cool was that he's turning this thing off.
Yeah.
And riding it as a heavy regular bike, and then turning it back on and feeling feeling the power, and then also feeling when he gets on his analog bike, turbo mode.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's using it, for the people that are like, e-bikes make you lazy. Like John's like, hold my beer. I'm riding this thing.
Oh my God, yeah.
full weight, it's like turning it off. and then getting stronger that way. So yeah, you can use them in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, you and I had talked about, if we'd gotten e-bikes, we were just starting to jump. Would we take the battery out and take it to the bike park, since you really don't need that weight,
right?
And the battery is, most of the weight is the battery, and the motor's probably second heaviest thing. But if you took that battery out, you're saving, gobs of weight. I don't know. Interesting stuff, man. Really interesting stuff.
Yeah. So, right. If you really love the geometry of your e-bike and you love the way that it jumps and you practice jumping on it.
Yeah.
And then you're really comfortable on it, and you want to go to a bike park. I feel like we've talked to a lot of people that have taken their e-bikes to bike parks, which at first I wouldn't have believed, but I've got a lot of feedback from people saying, no, it's awesome at a bike park. And they are awesome in the air. We know they jump well.
Oh yeah.
And then the fact that John said he's 62 and he went through cancer and he's recovering from that, he is recovered from that. And that's awesome, John. Good for you. You're unlimited. And, the e-bike to, give him 20 years of fitness back. And it sounds like he works hard also. Sounds like John's got that dog mentality and an e-bike.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
So
dangerous.
I love it. Yeah. Brandon Schopf. Apologies, Brandon, if I said your last name incorrectly, but thank you for commenting. And he says, I'm in a fortunate position to be able to ride 7 days a week. Ooh. I purchased an e-bike because I got a great deal. I thought that I would use it for progression, but it's now the bike that I grab 2 days a week when I need more chill, easy days on the trail. And then I'm paraphrasing. I have several bikes that I ride other than the e-bike: enduro, short travel, fat bike, and gravel. They're all tools, and I pick the right tool for the ride I want that day. They're all fun for what they are. If the e-bike replaced any of my bikes, it's my gravel bike. I use that for my easier days. It will now just sit on my trainer for winter training. So I'm all about replacing the gravel bike. Gravel to me sounds a lot like road riding. So
yeah. You're anti-drop bar. I think that's what it is. No matter what if it has drop bars, you're anti-drop bars. Absolutely. I'm a little less anti-drop bar. Well, that's probably what I'd get the gravel bike for. I'd actually like to get rid of my road bike and replace it with a gravel bike, so I have that option. There are a couple trails that I ride by in Gladwin that, I could just literally hop right onto it and do a little trail section in the middle of my road ride, which would be fantastic. Having said that,
that would be really cool.
Yeah, it really would.
Yes.
Having said that, I found, first of all, riding 7 days a week, tremendous. That is tremendous. And I can certainly see using an e-bike to help with those recovery days, especially, you're putting your body through a lot.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. No, for 7 days a week, the e-bike to me seems absolutely necessary. I don't know how Brandon did it before the e-bike.
Yeah.
What were some of these?
Yeah.
You have to have a day off. There has to be some rest in there somewhere. But good for you. And if he recognizes that he's fortunate to be able to go 7 days a week, and maybe some of those are commutes and that sort of thing. So, but yeah, the e-bike, fitting the e-bike in when you're tired, just seems like such a gift. Absolutely, and it's interesting. He bought it thinking one thing because he got a good deal on it, right? Oh, I'll use it here, and then he ends up, oh wait, this is actually where it works better. And so they have so many positive usage cases, I think.
Yeah, for sure, man. For sure. Thank you, Brandon.
Yeah. We didn't get any feedback from people saying, I bought an e-bike and I completely stopped riding my analog bike. And I think that's happened. RideLife1 at Gmail, YouTube. Like if that's happened, let us know. We're just curious, what the thought process was there or how that happened. And,
did we get a comment from Mark saying that he had friends that dropped their analog bikes completely? I thought Mark Tuneau commented.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah. Someone did comment about having...
It's like 7 friends or something like that.
Yes, it was 7 friends who bought e-bikes and stopped. So no one was writing and admitting it for themselves. But Mark was like...
You said list them
I got
all.
names. I'm not pointing fingers. but I got names.
So funny. Yeah. What was interesting from about Mark's comment, if I remember correctly, Mark he's also going through surgery. He's a Patreon member of mine, so I speak to him. He busted his shoulder actually on a ride with me at Sears. He like went off a jump and busted his shoulder. It's been bothering him for like a year, and he finally decided to get it taken care of.
Yes.
And he was lamenting like, man, I kind of wish I had an e-bike because it would allow him to recover through this surgery and still get rides in, you know? And I was like, oh yeah, that's, we've heard a lot of that stuff. Shelly did exactly that. She got that hip surgery.
Yes.
And up into the surgery, she was using the e-bike. And then after the surgery, I'm not sure if Shelly's still using the e-bike. I know when I rode with her at the WIS on Thursday, she was on an analog bike, and my goodness, I mean, she was killing it. So, I mean, the rides up until the surgery on the e-bike obviously helped keep her in shape for when she was finally recovered. She hopped on that analog bike. She was like, I mean, unbelievable. So strong. Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah. And skills get rusty. When we don't ride, skills get rusty. So if you can get back on the trail a little bit sooner.
Yeah.
Plus, this is what we love. This is what fills us up, is getting out for a ride, getting out in nature, right? You know, and walks and hikes and all that stuff is great. But if you're listening to this podcast, you love mountain biking. It does something to our souls. For me, it fills me up in a way that it just feels so good. It's a level of fun that I need in my week. And whether it's one day or 7 days, you know, it's just something that I need. And so when you're coming back from an injury, if an e-bike means that you can get back on the trail sooner and do this thing that we love in a safe way, and be with your friends and be in nature and be on the trail, and, you know, but also start picking up some of that balance and those skills again. Some people, it's just purely intuitive, but for other people, I'm sure it takes a little bit of time to come back. So. Yeah.
The last thing that I'll say, Dan, about the e-bike thing is, in talking to Rob, who rides his e-bike all the time at the WIS, and he said he gets a lot of fitness because he's just going faster. Like he's just like, so if it's capped at 20, you know, he's pushing the limits of where that motor starts to turn off. And if you're going that fast, you are turning those pedals. You are turning those pedals and you are working that bike at those speeds. That's a full body workout. So I think what I'm saying is, if you're pushing hard, it really doesn't matter if you're on a regular bike or on an e-bike. If you're pushing hard, you're pushing hard. And that must be a tremendous amount of workout. And I'm looking forward to seeing what that feels like at some point.
Yeah, I agree 100%. To us, the e-bike is a no-brainer. Could someone say that, you know, I just want to do downhills and I'm not in this sport for the exercise, I just want to be able to jump and shuttle up to the top? Yeah, sure. I think that's probably a minority, and there's also absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a minority. I've definitely run into a lot of people that that only shuttle or only do e-bike, you know, and all they really care about is bombing down these hills, you know. And that's fantastic. I mean, like, if that's what gets your heart going, I guess, or whatever, you know, if that's what gets your vibe high, you know, I don't know what the saying is there, but, you know, if that gets your rocks off, no, you can't say that. That's not appropriate.
Yeah, I was going to say rocks off, and I was like, nah, I don't want to say that. I'm not sure if we're supposed to say that.
Yeah, and also
but isn't that a Rolling Stones song?
No, but it excludes the ladies. That's not right.
Oh,
there are probably plenty of
Yeah. Oh, so you're saying that rocks are a male?
Isn't that what that saying means? Getting your rocks off?
I think so.
Jeez.
I think so.
Don't make me say it, damn it. Oh.
You're an arse man. You're not a rocks man.
That's right. Yes. Whatever gets your cheeks moving.
Yeah. We'll have to ridelifeone@gmail. What are we supposed to say here?
What do the ladies say? That's what we want to know.
We'll edit it back in. Yeah. Whatever gets your vibe high. I mean, that's not a term, but we're using it. Yeah. Whatever brings you sunshine, whatever makes you feel good. That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
All right. So, well, this is the part of the podcast where we thank all of our listeners and we appreciate you and we have gratitude for you. And if you don't mind, please give us a 5-star review.
Oh, yeah.
And rate and subscribe. All the podcast players, make sure you set us to auto download. And on YouTube, make sure that you subscribe and the thumbs up and watch the whole thing.
Hey, most importantly, Danny, please share it with your friends. That's the best.
Yes.
More than anything,
Yes.
if you're sharing it and spreading the good word, that's what means the most to us because we want to get this word out to everybody, man.
Yeah, if you're listening for the first time, or if you're a weekly listener and you could think of 2 or 3 people that you think would enjoy it, then yes, just send it to them. It's easy to do. So we appreciate that, and we're looking to keep growing the Ride and Laugh family and keep spreading the positivity and the high vibes of mountain biking and ride and laugh. That's what we do, and also progression. We talk about it all the time. So. Mm-hmm. We're doing it. We're living proof. Any progression this week on your rides?
No, not really any progression. What I did notice was on that Sunday ride that we had, I went out with Rob, who's on an e-bike, and his crew, and they were all on e-bikes. And it was a little bit colder in the morning. Like we started, it was probably in the 40s.
Okay.
And about halfway through the ride, a lot of them were saying that their batteries were almost dead.
Oh.
And we were only like 10 or 12 miles in. And it got me thinking, like, what do you do in the wintertime if you have an e-bike? Is that a legitimate concern? Do you have to bring a second battery with you, or do you have to park closer to the lot and switch out batteries? What do you do in the winter if you have an e-bike?
Ride and Laugh 1 at Gmail, YouTube comments, winter riding with the e-bike, is your battery getting drained faster? I also think that winter riding on an e-bike could probably be a lot of fun because you don't have to worry about, like, if there's snow down, you don't have to worry about slipping out as much. You can just traction through that. So yeah, that would probably be a lot of fun. But yeah, that if your battery's draining, I mean, what would not be fun is to be on a winter ride or a snow ride and you're on a 52-pound e-bike and the battery's gone and you got to get back to the car. Whew.
Yeah. Cold toes. Honey, can you come pick me up?
Fun. Yeah. Bring the truck. I got the e-bike. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So,
well, what are some other things about winter riding that we can get into, Danny? The reason why I brought it up was because it was so chilly that day and we parked at the Bamba lot. That lot is kind of like at the top of the mountain. And usually when it gets cold, you and I kind of park at that lower lake lot to get that climb in. And we didn't have that luxury. And I was cold for longer than I usually am because it took a while to get the body warmed up.
So you and I have been riding in the Northeast winters for a really long time. In fact, we started riding. I remember there was a time when we would just take off. The winter would come and then we would just take off. We were single speeders and the winter would come and we would just take off. And then you try to get your fitness back in the spring. And then fat bikes came out and I saw these things and I was just like, oh, wait a second. If I get one of those, I could just ride all winter. And I remember I didn't even tell anyone. We had a whole group of single speed riders and I just went and bought one. And I think I just showed up with it one day.
Yeah, you did.
I was like, I'm not taking winters off anymore, boys. I'm riding all winter. And I did. And you were like, yo, I need to get one of those. You guys saw me riding it. Yep. And I was just like pulling ahead. First of all, it had gears. It had loads of traction. It was a ton of fun. The conditions were really bad that day. And it just held and it ripped through climbs. And everyone else took the winter off. This is really where you and I kind of the friendship separated because you saw me and you were like, I need to get one of those ASAP. And you went out and got a fat bike the next week. I don't think it took very long at all. No, and we started riding all winter long. Yeah.
Yeah. There was no fitness drop. You're absolutely right. We came into that spring and all of our riding buddies were like, what? And we were gearing to go. It's kind of like Steven with his e-mountain bike friends. They got e-bikes and they kind of took off and he had to play catch up. And that's kind of like what that was like. You got one. Yeah, you got one. And I was like, well, I'm not going to be left behind. Like, I love riding. And if this means we can do more of it, Yeah, bikes make a huge difference, Danny. They make a huge difference. Those big wide tires, they float on top of the snow instead of sinking in. And so I guess that would depend on what kind of snow you have. But in general, out here, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, you really stay on top of it.
They weren't perfect for all snow. There were still conditions where you still couldn't ride them.
Right.
And they were fully rigid at first, and eventually we upgraded. I mean, your fat bike is like is an absolute beast now. The way that you have it upgraded, and it's lightweight, and we got carbon rims and tubeless, and but we really rode them a lot. They're great in mud and conditions where normally you wouldn't want to take a bike out because they don't leave the narrow tracks. They don't really sink in.
Yeah.
But what the fat biking did for us was that it opened us up to riding all winter long. And we learned a lot about what we are going to, how we're going to dress, what we need to do to prepare, how do we keep things warm. We rode a lot of below freezing temperatures. And so that's what we want to talk about today. We're heading into the winter in a lot of parts of the country. Most parts of the country is getting cold or colder. I happen to be in the Phoenix, Arizona area right now, and it's hitting really, really nice temperatures. That's one thing you could do for the winter is you could go someplace warmer if you have that option. When you watch mountain bike YouTube, they're all like, Arizona is one of the places that they visit in the winter because the riding here is good. This is peak time right now. But in the Northeast, you're starting to drop into those 40s, 30s, 20s. And for me, I don't really change anything about the way I dress unless it's below 50. 50 and above, I dress completely normal. I wear my summer shoes. Maybe I'll go fall gloves. But pretty much if the ride's starting at 50 and it's going higher, then I will just wear my regular shorts and short sleeves. And I know that I'll start cold. But with that first climb, and there's another tip in there, is if you can park at the bottom of a climb and start with the climb.
Oh, yeah.
I know that within 10 to 12 minutes, I'll be warmed up and I'll be comfortable. And then as the day goes on and it warms up a little bit at 50 or above, I'm good.
There's one piece of equipment that I know you love, and I love it too. I don't have one that's as nice as yours, but this piece of equipment is a must-have for any kind of cold weather riding, and that is a lightweight windbreaker. Because first of all, it really holds your heat in, but when you do start to sweat, it compacts really small and you can put it into your pack. And the nice thing about that lightweight windbreaker is you can start to layer underneath it. So you can start to wear that windbreaker when it's like 50 and below, and you can go all the way down. And then what you do is you start loading up underneath that windbreaker, but that's the first layer to come off. And man, I wish I had one like yours because yours is fantastic. I have ones for running that I use on my bicycling rides, but they're so handy, man. I would say if you're going to spend a little money, that's the first spot that you spend it on, a lightweight windbreaker.
Yeah. So when I get down into the 40s, I would say 40 to 50 or so, then I'll wear that lightweight windbreaker. I have one from Fox. I forget exactly what it's called. I'll put it in the show notes, but it's great.
The Ranger.
The wonder. Oh, is it the Ranger? Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
The wonderful thing about that, it's so lightweight. It breathes pretty well. And it's so lightweight that if you do decide to take it off, it rolls up pretty well, and it can go in your pack. So it's definitely something you could take off. Some of these heavier jackets, you can't really take them off. You can roll the sleeves up or unzip them a little bit, but this thing can come completely off and go into your pack. So something that I have done, so I don't have to remember every year how I want to dress, is I just opened up an email on my phone and started a draft of an email, and I call it, and you can do this anyway. You can call it notes, you could do it in any sort of note-taking capacity. But I just started writing down what I was wearing at what temperature, and at the end of the ride, I would make a note, my toes were cold. Go toe warmers next time, or don't do the heavy socks. And so I just started just tracking all this stuff. And now if I'm going on a ride, I'll look at my weather app, I'll see what the temperature is. Okay, it looks like it's going to start at 21 degrees. We're going to get up to 27 and pretty much just know exactly what to wear because I've already done it so many times. And so instead of having to reinvent the wheel every year, I forgot this, I forgot that, I just have a set of tips that I've created for myself. So it's kind of like a cheat sheet, a winter dress cheat sheet.
You just mentioned cold toes, and that brought up my second piece of gear, most important. So my first most important piece of gear was the windbreaker. My second most important piece of gear, good pair of wool socks. You can wear wool socks anywhere from like even in some wool socks you can wear in the 50s, even in the 60s, depending on like what kind of technology they're using. But I have different thickness wool socks that I'll wear from 40 all the way down to the teens. And what I'll do is I'll change my shoes, but those wool socks are they're unbelievable. And what makes wool so amazing is it breathes well, but it also holds the heat in. It's just the way that the fibers are constructed. And I don't have any brand recommendations, but regardless, wool socks is my number two item that you should definitely get.
Yes. Your second number two item or your second item.
Oh, yeah. The second number two item would be the fourth item.
That's number 4, I think.
Second number 2.
Here's an interesting tip for mountain bike socks, because I've gone through this also, and I really love the Woolly Bullies. There's an actual sock they call the Woolly Bully, and it's fantastic. And if you go and you get like a ski sock or you get a hiking sock and it's too thick, and you want to wear toe warmers. So tip number 3 is hand warmers and toe warmers, chemical hand warmers and toe warmers. They're cheap. I buy them by the case, and I put them on the top of so I have my socks on. It goes on the top of my toes.
Yep.
So that, because when you're cycling, you don't want to be stepping on that. It gets kind of annoying. So it's on the top. And if your socks are too thick, it actually doesn't allow the heat to radiate through the shoe. So you want wool socks are great, but you want to keep them thin. And some people will even buy a winter shoe that's a half a size too big for that very reason, that they're going to put some sort of warmer in there. Yeah.
Yes.
So the hand warmers and the toe warmers, but as far as the sock, sometimes I'll actually want to go thin sock. I might go regular sock with my fall shoe and toe warmers. So it is a lot of work. It is a lot. That's why I take notes, because I don't want to have to figure this out every winter. Yeah, so we have summer shoes which are really well ventilated so that your feet can breathe, which is a strike in the winter. And then we have kind of like these mid-weight fall shoes that we use for the primary amount of our cold weather riding, and they're going to also be a little bit more waterproof.
Oh yeah.
So if there's snow or if there's a cold creek crossing, you don't want to have ventilated shoes that are going to let cold water in. And then we have like our heavy duty, no nonsense, moon boot looking snow boot.
Oh,
and
I haven't worn those in ages.
When we were fat biking, we used those things all the time. And I've kind of moved away from it. Like if we're going to do a ride where we're going to wear the moon boot, I'm probably just going to ride my trainer. But they are so heavy, but they're awesome. So your take on the footwear.
I really do want to send that point home, is that if you're going to get a winter shoe, definitely size up 1/2 bigger, because you're going to be wearing thicker socks and you do want to put toe warmers in. That is so important, Danny. So whatever shoe size you wear now, just go half a size up for your winter shoe, unless the company stresses this is already made to be a little bit bigger. I know that when I bought my Shimano winter/fall shoes, I went a half size up, only to find out that they already compensated for that. So now the shoes look like giant clown shoes on my feet. They're too expensive. I'm not in to replace it, but it just sucks, So just make sure you're doing that research beforehand. Yeah, the shoes are so complicated. And I do want to point out that, it also, a lot of the stuff that we're talking about depends on your personality too. Like I tend to do well in the cold. I'm not someone that struggle. In fact, I like it a little bit cold, but I know, like my ex-wife, she hated the cold. Like she absolutely hated the cold. I know a couple other riders that just refuse to go out because their hands start to hurt or their feet start to hurt. And our tips can only take you so far, and it just might be a case where you're like, winter riding is just not for me. But if you're winter riding curious, these are the things that kind of work for us, And another tip that I'm going to drop here has to do with exactly that. If you have hands that hurt, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll start a ride and I'll actually start with 2 pairs of gloves. I'll bring my heavy fall or heavy winter gloves. And then I know that within about an hour or two, I'm going to start sweating. These gloves, there's nothing worse than having sweaty hands in gloves. It feels terrible. I'll put those in my pack and whip out my other set of gloves, and boom, I have a fresh set of a little bit lighter pair of gloves. It's been great. And I guess most of the tips that we're talking about kind of require you to have some kind of a pack, I guess, because where you're putting all this gear, you're either parking very close into like a central location where you can visit the car several times, or you're riding with a pack.
I'd recommend riding with a pack in the winter. I think that you're going to want to change layers. I think that there's a very good chance you might want to change gloves. If you're wearing the heavy gloves and in the beginning, the first 20 minutes of the ride, you're like, okay, that feels better and your fingertips are getting numb and so the heavier glove like just feels better. And then your hands start to get sweaty. Yeah. And it kind of affects your grip. It's just uncomfortable. Sweaty hands inside in general are uncomfortable. Sweaty hands inside of a winter glove and it's warming up and you're warmed up. When you pull those off and you put on like a lighter pair of gloves or just a fresh pair of gloves, it feels so good. So
yeah, it really does.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say you can start with hand warmers or you can keep hand warmers in your pack. You could always throw those in.
Yeah.
You can always take them off. You can always take them out.
Yeah.
The toe warmers are a little bit more difficult. If you don't start a ride with them, it's hard to stop on a cold ride. Take your shoe off and put a toe warmer on. If you're desperate enough, you will. But numb toes is also not really fun at all. I've done rides before where my toes are so numb that they're not coming back to life until I get into the shower and it hurts. You feel that blood flow come back in, it hurts.
This is not a struggle for me because I'm used to it at this point. I'm wondering if you go through this as well. The first like 20 minutes or 30 minutes actually is excruciatingly painful. Like I remember when it gets, when you get below freezing, I should have stated that. When you get below freezing, my hands and feet actually go through a process where it's actually really painful. Like it hurts. And then at some point, the blood flow eventually starts reaching your hand. I guess that's how it works. And then all of a sudden you're fine. But I know that's coming. Like I know I just have to work through this part of the pain and eventually it goes away. And I wonder if that's a roadblock for some people like that. I mean, it is excruciatingly painful.
It's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable starting when it's really, really cold. Riding Life 1 at Gmail YouTube comments. What are your cold weather tips or anything that we're saying that you use or do you just not ride in the cold? Is it not fun for you? Something I do in the cold when it's really cold out is I'll have all my gear ready. It's in the front seat next to me and I'll leave the heat on in the car and I will get fully ready in the car.
Yeah.
And I'm not getting out until the ride's starting. So I get out, I get the bike ready, and then I get back in the car.
Yeah.
And then all your buddies give you the thumbs up. I'm like, all right, let's get out, let's ride. But, the last thing you want to do is stand around waiting.
Oh, the worst.
Or putting gear on.
Yeah.
And when it's super cold out. So how about this one? Put your shoes and your gloves at the bottom of the wheel well in the front seat. So if you can, so that they get the heat on them.
Yeah.
So you can be heating them up on the way to the trail and they'll start warm.
Yeah.
Every little thing helps. You don't want to put cold shoes on or cold gloves on and then hop out of the car and it's below freezing and you're already kind of fighting it.
Yeah. Yeah. I know that winter gear can get really expensive, but invest in just one pair of good socks, one good jacket, a good windbreaker, just once. Just spend the money. It's worth it. And I would stay away from anything cotton, anything that's going to hold on to moisture. You want fabrics that are going to breathe,
right.
which sounds contrary, I guess, to what you would think like, oh, I want to hold on. No, you don't. You want to get rid of all that moisture. You want your gear to breathe. And I guess that's my only tip. If you can't afford anything expensive, cheap flannel, that works great. Layer it up. Don't use cotton to layer up.
Yeah, get some sort of technical base layer. And then on top of that, you can put a flannel or a regular jacket if you need to. But the base layer, whatever's against your skin, needs to be somewhat wicking, and it could be wool, it could be silk, it could be, it could be technical from one of the sports apparel companies, which is probably the easiest way to go. And I don't think it's probably all that expensive to get like a decent base layer anymore.
Yeah. You go to Old Navy, for God's sakes.
2 more items that I really want to make sure that we hit. One is a comment that we get all of the time when we do our winter riding, and people see pictures of it, and the comment is
shorts.
Shorts? You guys are wearing shorts? I mean, how cold does it have to be for us to put on pants? That sounds weird. They make some really nice mountain bike pants now. Like, they do make really cool mountain bike pants. I know that there's some apparel companies that are nailing that. But you and I have found that we it has to be unbelievably cold for me to really want to cover up my legs. We wear shorts. Our legs don't bother us. It has to be in the 20s. I would say it has to be in the low 20s for me to think about putting something over my legs, just because when I finish those rides, the skin gets really red. Like, I'm just like, okay, maybe I'm getting a little frostbite here.
For me, it has to be in the teens, but let me put a small caveat. If it's above the teens, but there's a lot of snow. So if there's more than like a foot of snow, sometimes I'll put on yoga pants. Basically, they're basically yoga pants, but they're a little bit better. Yeah. They're cycling tights, I guess.
They're your ex-wife's yoga pants.
Yeah, that's what I started with, and then I did I actually invested in a pair of like actual thermal tights, but it's only if you fall and your skin touches the snow, you get that rash, that it's not rug burn, cold burn. I don't know what it is.
I remember I remember like kind of like falling over in the snow ride, and there was maybe it had rained. There was like that crusty kind of hard ice over the snow that you break through right away when you're riding. I remember just like tipping over and my knee going into that snow, and then standing back up, and my knee was all bloody. The ice and the snow had just like totally just cut up my knee.
Oh, it's so painful. Yes. Yeah. Yes. That's why that's my only caveat. So I'll go all the way down to the teens and shorts, because my legs, they don't get cold. I wear longer socks.
Yeah.
But yeah, if there's snow on the ground, then sometimes I'll wear tights of some sort. So I don't know.
But we're pretty much shorts guys. Yeah, we wear shorts with winter shoes and winter jackets and winter gloves and beanies. You want to keep your ears warm, right? There's another one. You want to make sure that you have something where you can pull over your ears. That gets really cold, and a lot of times your summer helmet is going to be really well ventilated. So you want some sort of winter cap, and they make different ones, different weights.
That's a great point.
Yeah, and those that can get sweaty also. I keep an extra winter cap. I like to be able to switch out the winter cap.
Glasses.
Yes, and absolutely in the winter, for me, glasses are 100% necessary, because as soon as I start hitting any speed, my eyes completely just water up.
Yeah,
it's the cold but it's a great time because you're not really sweating, you're not dripping sweat into your glasses, and you're not really fogging them up. Especially if you're using my gratitude of the week last week, the OptiWipes anti-fog, which totally worked. Yeah. So the glasses is another one. Ride and Laugh 1 at Gmail and YouTube comments. What are we missing? What do you agree with? What's your winter experience? Do you ride outdoors?
How about the bottle, Danny? You want to get an insulated bottle. I have one from Camelback that's, it's the bottle is the same exact size, but there's like a liner in it that, if it gets under the 20s, the liner really isn't effective. But, up until that point, it will keep it from freezing, and I'll even put a little bit of salt or light show in it. And that helps too.
Yes, that's a good idea. That's a good tip. And I will sometimes boil water before the ride. And I'll fill my bottle up with half regular water and half hot water. I don't really want to put boiling water into a plastic water bottle and, get all that delicious plasticness into your system.
Yeah.
There are metal insulated bottles. They're usually not bike bottles. You usually have to stop and untwist them. You can't just use them during the ride. So, but I've used those before, and they keep everything really warm. What about the insulated hose for the hydration pack? I've actually found that to work fairly well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the insulated hose. Again, all those things work until about the 20s.
Yeah.
You get into the low 20s and none of that helps at all, you know. But yes, you're right.
Yeah.
You can get, for if you have a Camelback or an Osprey or whatever the brand that you're using, all those hoses are about the same width, and you can get an insulated protector that slides over that hose. And I highly recommend that if you plan to ride through the winter and you have. Here's the other thing though, Danny. How long are the rides? I mean, maybe you don't need a hydration pack. I know I hardly drink anything. The only reason why I carry a pack is to put all my extra gear.
Yeah.
You know, but I'm really only drinking, if I even drink a whole bottle. You know, the rides are shorter. You know, if we're doing, you know, close to like 18 to 20 in the summer, in the winter, I'm only doing like 10 to 12. You know, it's almost cut in half.
Usually, but not always. We've been out for longer winter rides for sure. And when I used to ride before I got my trainer, I used to ride the fat bike all winter long at West or Belmont before work. And so I'd be out there at 5:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
And it would be 18 degrees and I would do 3.5 hours. One of the things I found with the insulated tube, it will help. And if you put warm water in the hydration pack, that's a good idea also. You can put your jacket over the hydration pack. That's going to keep the water a little bit warmer.
Boom.
You have to keep sipping on that tube. You have to keep the water moving. That little tube of water will freeze much faster than the reservoir. So you have to, if you forget, you will end up with just a solid tube and it's over. You're not defrosting that thing. So keep on sipping. That's a lesson I learned.
Yeah.
Sounds like a commercial. Keep on sipping. We'll make more.
You know, Danny, the e-bike comment that I made to start this conversation. Now I'm starting to wonder, with all these people with electronic shifting, electronic droppers, electronic everything.
Oh yeah.
What's the battery life on those? You know, is that something that
those things last a really long time. I haven't cold. I have electronic shifting on my Evo, but I haven't ridden it in the winter yet. So
in the winter,
I couldn't tell you. Yeah. But I mean, if you have a freshly charged battery, those batteries last a really long time. You don't have to charge those very often. So I would be surprised if it was, you know, I don't know. Do you have to charge? Let us know. Ride and Laugh One Gmail, YouTube comments. Do you have to charge your Axis battery for your dropper or for your shifter before cold weather rides to make sure that you're going to get the full length? Has anyone experienced that being an issue?
I wonder.
I have another really important point to make about winter riding. And there is a fun factor that goes up exponentially when the trails are legit frozen.
Oh my gosh.
When you're really below, if you're right around that, and we've talked about freeze thaw in different podcasts where the ground expands and loosens with getting above and below freezing, and it forces kind of water up. And so freeze thaw makes a lot of single track can get muddy.
Yeah.
So, but if you get well below 32, if you get into that 28 to 30 range or lower, and you start getting frozen trails, and they're not covered in snow or ice yet, they're just frozen. Frozen trails are maybe the fastest trails you're going to ride all season long. And they're super fun. They're super tacky. I love frozen trails.
The other side of that, so that's a huge positive. The other side of that is it hurts a lot more when you fall. Holy moly. Oh, yeah. That ground is hard. Yes. Oh my Lord.
Yes, that's true. Yes, that is true. That is solid. Solid point. So, all right. Well, what did we miss? Ride and Laugh One at Gmail, YouTube comments. What did we miss? Winter riding. What are other tips? And then, you know, something I mentioned it before. I mentioned it earlier. I don't really wear my moon boots anymore. I sold my fat bike. I stopped going out when it's below 20 degrees, when it's just super, super cold, when there's a ton of snow on the ground. I started riding my trainer. I really enjoy those trainer rides. Enjoy might be the wrong word, but I find them very productive. And to me, when it's like really, really nasty out, I just found myself migrating, saying, I'm going to do a tough trainer ride, and at Sage, I'll meet you for breakfast.
Yeah, I am not in that camp. I ride all year round.
Yeah.
And I just invested in gear over time. Little by little, I'll just add another piece. A big one for me are bar mitts, which they make for the road bike and mountain bike. They're basically giant hood covers that you can slide over, and they protect your hands. And, you know, for me, I like that. I like going out in all different kinds of conditions. I think it brings a different feel to the ride. And I like that challenge. It's not necessarily fun getting started, but I know once I get past that 20-minute mark that I'm having a good time. And so I just keep that in my head. Like, listen, it's going to get better. And yeah, it's gear makes all the difference. It really does. It can make or break your ride. And I think everyone's going to be different here. So you're going to want to experiment a little bit. Like Dan said, keeping a notebook and tracking what you're doing, you know, and this worked and this didn't. And then you're going to get to know yourself. These are just things that you and I do and have worked for us. But even you and I are different in terms of how we like to dress and what we like to wear. So.
All right. Great stuff. Anything that we missed?
What about a gaiter? It just popped into my head. Do you use a gaiter? I love gaiters.
Is that the neck thing?
Yeah, but you could pull it up over your head. They're so versatile.
Oh, the balaclava. Yeah. How do we forget that? Yeah, that's a good one. Yes. RideLife1 at Gmail. YouTube comments. If you put balaclava or the gaiter, we just thought of it. So you go ahead and delete that comment, write something else.
I feel like, gosh darn it.
These guys totally forgot the balaclava. One of my favorite words to say. Sounds like a dessert, doesn't it? I'll have the balaclava. Thank you. Chocolate, please. Yeah, that's a versatile one. Sometimes you have to take your helmet off because you got to pull that thing off when it's too hot and you have something on your neck. It's like unbelievably hot. But to start off when it's really cold, being able to cover your neck and then pull it up, and then your breath kind of like heats it up. And you can pull it up over your head. That's a really good one. And winter can also just be beautiful. I mean, I've been out on winter rides where I'm just like, my God, it's stunning out here. We've ridden on frozen lakes before, you know, like things happen. We're just like, oh my God, we could ride the lake. And, you know, and so, yeah, winter can be also beautiful and amazing. And it has its own set of challenges. And if you have the right gear, you can have a lot of fun out there in the winter.
All right, Danny, I'm sorry for interrupting you. I'm ready for gratitudes.
My mountain bike gratitude of the week is something that I didn't mention in our tips because it's really for bald guys.
Oh.
But I switched from a regular helmet, a summer helmet, and then I would have all the different caps. And what I would find is that the cap would get sweaty as I'm riding, and the vents would then freeze the cap. And I would get like this crazy headache of just like ice around my head. And so I had to like switch caps all the time, which was really uncomfortable. And then at some point I just was like, hey, why don't I just get a snowboard helmet?
Genius.
And so I started wearing snowboard helmets, and I've been through a couple of them. The one I have right now, I forget exactly which one it is, but I can look it up and put it in the show notes. It's fantastic. It has a simple vent that you can turn off or on, so you can open or close it. But as a bald guy, now when my head gets really sweaty, I don't get that wind coming through. And so it just makes it really, really comfortable, and it's pretty lightweight. It's just made my cold weather riding so much more comfortable. So bald guys, if you're struggling with this, check out a cheap snowboarding helmet. It doesn't even need to be expensive. And it's made a huge difference for me. So I really appreciate that snowboarding helmet. And it's a great tip, and I have gratitude for it.
Yeah, man. That's I remember when you made that switch, and that was genius. That was absolutely genius. Great tip, as well as gratitude. My gratitude is going to go to my fat bike. I totally changed. I had a different one written down, but I just realized like how much fun I have on that fat bike. And you're right. I have dialed that thing over the years, slowly adding pieces to it. That thing is a cross-country machine. I ride it all year round. I have the carbon rims on it. It's a carbon frame. It's sub like 28 pounds. It's so light. I got a fork on it. It's like a RockShox Bluto or something like that. It's a suspension fork. It's got a dropper, of course. It's so much fun, Danny. I love it. I don't know if Carver still makes that bike, but if it is, I will list it in the description below. But yes, that is my gratitude.
You are absolute rocket on that machine. The winter is your fastest time because you're so bad at hydrating. Sage famously only drinks coffee. We can't get him to drink any water. On the trail, you might be able to get him to drink a little bit of water, but in the winter, like you're unleashed. which is crazy. You're always peaking at the time when your other riding friends are like kind of like in recovery mode. I know that you'd like to ride it more, but we both had fat bikes in the past, and we put the carbon rims on it. And a carbon fat bike rim is really wide. It's a lot of carbon, so it's more expensive. And we've broken those rims a few times because we're doing everything on the fat bikes. We've done jumps and drops and tech. And so I know that you keep the PSI a little bit higher in those tires to make sure you don't break the rim. And then that adds a little bit of discomfort that you don't ride the fat bike as much.
Yeah. So, mountain bike tip.
Yes. And also, if you have a fat bike, let us know. I feel like the fat bike craze kind of came and went, and now you really don't see very many of them anymore. Yeah,
it's weird.
Yeah. We'll talk about fat bikes in a different episode, maybe. But yeah, they're really fun. They're really fun. Yeah. So let us know if you have one. Ride Laugh One, Gmail, YouTube comments, and if you had one and you got rid of it, let us know why. All right, tip of the week.
Tip of the week, and this is a great one, and you had kind of touched on it by keeping your backpack underneath your jacket. I got one step above that, and that is when it gets into the teens. We were talking about how that the tube freezes and how the insulated bottles, they don't work when it gets into the teens. But there's one thing that you can do that works no matter how cold it gets, and that is use a runner's soft flask. So what you do is you get a very thin runner's pack, like a hip pack made for a runner. So it's very like thin. There's not much to it. You put a soft flask inside of that, and you put that underneath your jacket, whatever, just next to your body. So it's always getting your body temperature. The downside is when you go to take a sip, you have to unzip the soft pack to take a sip, but you're really not drinking as much when it gets cold. So it's really not as big of a pain in the rear end as you think it is. And if it means that it doesn't ever freeze, I use that trick all the time. I use it on my road bike, and I use it on my mountain bike. When it gets into the teens, I just put a soft flask in my hip pack. So that's my mountain bike tip. Danny, I don't know if you've ever tried that one.
I haven't tried it. No, that's a great tip. I don't know why you've been doing that and I haven't tried it. That sounds like it's something I should have gotten into. Is it a specific flask that you use that we could put in the show notes, or is it just do you just Google runner's flask? Is it
any soft flask will work? I happen to use the ones from Salomon. They're just one of those running companies that I like and I trust. So I'll list those soft flasks in there. They come in all different sizes too. That's the thing, Danny. It's wonderful. You can get really big ones. You can get really small ones depending on how big your hip pack is. So yeah.
That's great. That's great, because there's nothing worse than going out on a ride and your water's frozen. And now not only are you not drinking, but you're also lugging around a block of ice around for the whole ride,
That's right. Yeah.
Be able to avoid that would be really nice. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So you think riding your e-bike without the power on is hard? I ride with a 3-pound block of ice on my back. Extra training. You've heard of rucking? This is sucking. All right. Well, thank you everybody for listening. If you're still listening, you're definitely one of us. You love mountain biking. Rate and subscribe on your podcast player. Give us a thumbs up on YouTube, and comments help the algorithm. Tell your friends. We appreciate you. Everyone have a great week and a great week of riding. Ride and laugh.
I'll see you, everyone.